Episode 7 was based on the Left Behind DLC from The Last of Us Part 1, and it was pretty accurate to the source material. Those of us that played the DLC, we know there was one major change. Ellie doesn't fight off a bunch of raiders that followed them from the university. The people that attacked them at the university tracked them and found them at a mall where Ellie was treating Joel's wound. Ellie fought off and even killed a handful of grown men. That might make sense in a game, but it's very unrealistic. We've been starved of action for the last couple of episodes, but I think episode 8 is going to get really violent. Those of us that played part 1 know what to expect from episode 8, and honestly, I'm really excited. It's going to get a lot darker and a lot more action packed. Ellie manages to take Joel into an abandoned house and tries to treat his wound. Joel, having survived the apocalypse for the last 2 decades, knows he's in bad shape. He knows Ellie is just a kid. She has no idea how to help him, and the wound looks bad, like really bad. It looked like the handle of the bat was like 3 or 4 inches in his stomach. That's a pretty bad injury in normal circumstances. Joel realizes how bad their situation is and tells Ellie to go back to Tommy. Joel thinks he's done for because he tells Ellie to go back to Tommy, not to go get Tommy or to take him to Tommy. Joel has a dark past. He and his brother Tommy killed people in the past. He would know the types of injury that gets people killed. Ellie does think about leaving, and that triggers the flashback to when she felt like she abandoned someone. Ellie herself has abandonment issues. She says in episode 6 everyone she cared about either leaves her or dies, and from episode 5 we know Ellie's afraid of ending up alone. She wouldn't want the person she cares the most about to live her worst nightmare. But it's more than that. She thinks this is another instance where someone she loves dies because of her. Riley died trying to give her the best night of her life, and Joel is about to die trying to make sure she gets to where she needs to be. From Ellie's flashback, we meet her best friend Riley. Ellie also has a crush on her. Riley ran away 3 weeks ago and joined the Fireflies. She snuck into Ellie's room to take her out to the abandoned mall to give her the best night of her life before she left for the quarantine zone in Atlanta. But Ellie didn't know Riley was leaving. She thought her best friend, who she thought left her forever, was finally back. Ellie was at first, of course, angry with her, but agreed to sneak out with her. Once in the mall, Ellie and Riley are back to being best friends. As we see them hang out, it's pretty obvious to us that Ellie has a crush on Riley, but she doesn't know how to act on it. Riley also feels the same way. We see her test out the waters when she says she was imagining how Ellie would look in lingerie in front of the Victoria's Secret store. But like Ellie, she doesn't know how to communicate her feelings. And we've all been there with our first love. It's things like this that makes the show so great because we can connect to it. And when they finally kissed, that moment of happiness, both of the actors portrayed that perfectly. But we know happiness in The Last of Us doesn't last. We saw that with Bill and Frank and with Henry and Sam. The same thing happens to Ellie and Riley. A infected attacks them, and in the struggle, they both end up being bitten. We know Ellie will be okay, but Riley won't be. Riley wanting to live as long as possible instead of taking their lives after being bitten also echoes one of the main themes of The Last of Us, which is to survive and endure. It worked out for Ellie. In episode 4, Ellie says it's not her first time hurting someone after shooting Brian. That makes us wonder if Riley is the first person she hurt. Ellie's gotten into a lot of fights in the military school, but throwing a couple of punches isn't the same thing as shooting someone. In this episode, we don't find out what happens to Riley. We don't know if she turned and Ellie had to fight her off. The implication that Ellie may have killed her first love is horrible, but it fits the atmosphere of The Last of Us to a T. It's a dark and terrible world. It also mirrors Henry killing Sam. He had to do it. Maybe Ellie had to do it too. And maybe Ellie felt the same way Henry did afterwards, but maybe someone stopped her. Someone like Marlene. It doesn't seem like Marlene has any personal connection to Ellie on the HBO adaptation, which is a pretty big change from the game. But I think she does, and we'll see that on episode 9. In part 1, Marlene hides her connection to Ellie from her and only tells her about it when she absolutely has to. I think it's the same in the TV series, just at a later time. I'll have a video on that soon, and when I do, I'll put a card up here. Ellie being alone from the beginning, then finding someone, and now losing that someone, the only person that she cared for, and that cared back for her, is where her abandonment issue comes from. There are 2 episodes left, but there is still so much story left to tell. I'm wondering how this season can cover the entirety of the first game. The last 2 episodes aren't super long either. The show's been better than I could have hoped for, and I'm excited to see how they conclude the first season.